Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. I am Joe Craig, the Ambush Skald. In this episode, we will determine who won the battle between Feather and Fang. Who is this woman that was found in the cellar of the pub? Where does this tunnel go? What will happen with Dandros now that he has earned the mantle of Master? We will find the answers to these questions and more in this episode of the Calmbringer Cycle. Welcome to Tales from the Golden Imp. Episode 17, The Found. Jaina slumped against the wall and just looked over the woman. There wasn't a mark on her. She was just asleep, and soundly at that. Not a natural sleep in any sense of the word. That much was clear. So much like Meg this woman looked. But it wasn't her. What did these women want with Meg? Why were they trying to take her? The drugs in her own system were starting to wear off, and Jaina's head was clearing. The Durgish guards had been called, and things were being catalogued. It had been a few hours since the group had descended into that passageway. Did it lead up and out of Durg? Had they not been in time? They searched so hard for Meg. To what end? Was this the end of the trail? Would they have to leave it to the fates? She felt like such a failure right now. But at least they have saved this woman. It was something. But not the desired goal to this mission. First she lost Maris, now Meg. Who else would she lose along the way? It was weighing heavy on Jaina. But what could be done that was left undone? She was so tired. She pushed herself way beyond her limits, but it made her sloppy in some ways. She should have not tried that door before Joseph helped her. Her what-ifs continued on and on and on. As she sat there, with the dwarven guards continuing their work around her, a familiar face came in. Jaina recognized him instantly. Dandros, you look nearly as tired as I am. Jaina spoke while rising to her feet. They embraced in a wonderful embrace, both of them far beyond exhausted. Dandros unreleasing Jaina from the embrace. Sorry I couldn't come sooner. I had promises to fulfill and things to prove myself before I could do anything or be anything for anyone else. What's the latest? The latest is there's a secret passage over there, and beyond that passage is what we presume is that Meg and her remaining captors have traveled down. The passage is being investigated now. But one of you look different somehow. What's going on with you? Dandros blushed a bit. I've been named Master of the Forge, and have found my craft. But that's a story for another day. How can I help? What needs done? Are you okay? You seem very pale. He moved to inspect Jaina, placing his hands on her forehead to check her temperature. I believe I was poisoned. Do you have the ability to heal that? I was struck with a punching dagger and a small canister popped out after it was struck. I healed the wound, but the wound is still hot to the touch. Jaina pulled open her breastplate to reveal the source of the wound. Dandros placed his hands on the wound and said a prayer to Belden. As he did, a yellow liquid began to discharge from the wound, and Jaina's fever broke. As it did, her head cleared instantly. She was still tired, but that was from pushing herself too hard for too long. Only a good night's sleep would fix that. The color returned to her, however. Thank you, Dandros. That is much better. You want to help me move this woman, or see if there's something you can do for her?" With not another word, Dandros went over to inspect the woman. She was sleeping soundly. Dandros placed his hand on her forehead and closed his eyes. He sensed the woman was drugged and in a deep slumber. He knew the drug that was used, and it was something that was used to help aid in surgeries. An apothecary is needed here. This is a natural sleep. My magic would be wasted on this. I could try, but I don't think it would work. We need to either allow her to wake on her own, or visit an apothecary to get a cure that will wake her. Either way, she's safe to move. A voice called from the opening of the cellar door. "Mom, you clear-headed enough for a report about the woman we have up here?" The voice was from a male dwarf, older from the sounds of things. "Yes, sir. I'll be right up. I am now that Dandros here cured what ailed me." With that, Jaina began to climb. Fatigue still gripped her, so she was shaky. But her mind was clear enough for what the man had to offer. At least she believed so. Up the stairs she went. "Dandros, will you stay with her just in case she wakes? It's been a while since we found her body. She could be waking soon." Jaina rose into the dusty kitchen and to the form of the woman laying on the floor. They had made a gruesome scene in the short combat they had. Inspector Kelix allowed Jaina to take in the scene for a bit, then began to give his report of his findings. "Well, ma'am, the strangest thing about the woman is where I will begin first. The woman's tongue has been removed, and it seems to be removed with hot pinches of something that cauterized the flesh instantly. Beyond that, her vocal cords were severed. Quite frankly, the woman was unable to utter a sound. She was armed with multiple daggers and a punching dagger. The punching dagger was strapped to her left wrist, and that's the type that had an injector built into it. That injector was used to inject the toxin that you were suffering from. She seemed to have several different toxins to use. And from the looks of things, you were fortunate that she was attempting to capture instead of kill. Many of the toxins she carried were lethal. She wore no jewelry save the necklace that was some kind of pendant of a glass jar with blood and an amethyst in it. It shows as magical. I'm unable to discern what kind of magic is tied up in there. Her boots were also boots that are best served in colder climates. Aside from that, there is nothing to discern who or what she is, or where she came from. What else can I brief you on?" The inspector finished flipping through his notes, trying to make sure there was nothing he left out that could have been important. Jaina looked over the silent form once more. "Any personal belongings found on or around her, or around this place? I know I've not seen anything, but perhaps you have." "No, ma'am. She had a coin purse. Most of her coin in it were minted from the city of Kando. It's the next largest mint of coin behind Durg. That points to her being from either Kindor or Credo, if not the Vultan. I'm not certain about the source of coin that the Vultan has been using in recent years. But I know at some point in time they were using their own mints, as they wanted control over the imagery of the coins. She's a foreigner for sure." He produced a triangular-shaped gold piece to show an example of the coin. "Here in Durg, we don't use triangles. We use square, round, and hexagon to mark the values of the coins. The coins weigh out the same, so they can be used indiscriminately. It's just in how they were shaped, to help those that can't see to find the proper coin." Jaina nodded to the man and thought, "What's the likelihood that these people are working with the Vultan? Since the Vultan has us under siege right now, that would seem to make some sense." The inspector nodded. That's my thoughts as well. But why target your friend Meg instead of someone that is important to the city as a whole, unless there is another motive here? That's an amazing question, Inspector, is all Jaina could say in regard to the question. Her mind drifted to Meg and the stories that she had told. She sought something and was in travels to find it, that had led her to Malatin and the conflict that had plagued her town. She had been ever vigilant and spoke of a higher purpose more than once. Was Meg someone important, and they not know? There was too many questions for her mind. She had to sleep on this. Thank you, Inspector. I'm far too tired to think of any other questions. You've done amazing work here. We need to move the girl downstairs to a safe location. We don't know what part she has to play in all this, but I truly believe that she is a victim of the same group as my friend. I'm afraid she was confused for Meg, and that's how she ended up here. The inspector nodded. We have a place we can take her. We will make the ride as gentle as we can for her. We will notify you once she's awake, so we can hopefully get some answers to the questions that we all have. Perhaps we will even find your friend. Thank you, Inspector. I'll be at Tina's if you need me. I need some sleep. With that, Jaina said goodbye to Dandros. Dandros returned the pleasantry and stated that he would stay with the girl until she awoke. With that, Jaina was off to Tina's to get a good night's sleep, not knowing if it were truly day or night above her in the sky. But honestly, too tired to care at the moment. As the sun rose, with the goblins dispatched or routed, the forces of the Great Falls Force were licking their wounds and accounting for the dead. Each loss was mourned, as it was an immortal being snuffed out. Some of the fallen had fought against Callisto in the last war, yet they would fight no more. It was the rest of Necropus for them now. One of the rocks had returned badly wounded and nearly dead. Some of the hands were working on the beast to patch up the wounds to keep him alive. They all waited with bated breath for the result of the battle to the southeast. But in the interim, the soldiers made contact with the forces of Durg, and the wall beyond the gate was opened. Much-deserved respite was given to the forces of Durg, though it was hanging on a knife's edge. It had been over an hour since the final rock dove into the chest of the dragon, and neither beast had been seen since. She was a brave beast, and was ridden by a seasoned warrior that had battled with a dragon before. Moreover, lived to tell the tale. By the odds, what would be the chance that she would survive a second dragon? The answer would show itself in the form of a shattering in the tree line at the exit of the city of Kievstown. Shattering the trees into a massive blast of splinters was a huge black form of a dragon, wings shredded but very much alive. The form of the dragon was hulking and looming over the forces that were gathered at the mouth of the cave entrance. The beast and its glowing purple eyes were angry and made the displeasure known by puffing out its chest and letting out a massive roar. Many of the soldiers dropped in fear from the sheer presence of the massive dragon. This roar was the only warning that the forces of Feldus and Durg had before the beast charged in. Clamoring of armor and arms being brought to bear against the monstrosity happened all of a sudden. But the beast let out a stream of acid, melting several soldiers in their boots. Their armor and skeletal remains were all that was left of the one struck by the acid. Forming ranks against the beast, the combination of elves and dwarves worked well in the way they were armed. The dwarves lined up first and second ranks, with the elves behind them. The dwarven shields locked with one another to form a shield wall, and elvish spears were set just beyond them. Arrows loosed from above the two ranks and slammed into the dragon without effect. The wedge shape of the forces were met by the force of a charging dragon. The dragon barreled chest first into the line of dwarves that were met with stabs of spears that formed the third and fourth lines. Dwarves and elves flew back from the impact, yet more of them charged in to face the beast head on. The spears bit deep of the flesh of the dragon, and this was met with the impact of hammer and sword from the dwarves. The shredded wings slammed down against the lines of elves and dwarves. Spinning with its tail, the lines were knocked down, made disorganized. Leaping in, the spearmen found flesh of the dragon and bit deeply. The blood of the dragon was already leaking here and there. While spinning, the beast took its left claw and struck another dwarf that was standing there. And the mouth bit down on an elf that had slammed yet another spear into its chest, trying to find the dragon's heart. With a swing of its massive head, the elf was tossed over 50 yards away. That elf had found purchase with its spear, however, just over the most vital areas. The spear stuck there but needed to be driven in deeper. As the dragon came down, 3 dwarven warriors grabbed a hold of the spear with a roll-like motion and stabbed the spear in deeper. This got the dragon's immediate attention. He snapped at the warriors at his chest, the best he could, but the angle was all wrong. Now in a panic, he vented green smoke that would hopefully put many of these warriors to sleep. He spun as well, but the dwarven warriors were hanging on for their lives. 2 of them flew off, but one held his ground. He slid his feet behind the massive scales of the dragon and with a thrust sent the spear deeper into the chest cavity of the great beast. As the green miasma struck the soldiers around, many of them fell to the ground, falling victim to the gas. One dwarf didn't. He was holding his breath, and with a massive exhale, he pushed the spear deeper still into the dragon. With a groan, the dragon went rigid, let out a bemoaned groan, and fell. The glowing purple eyes of the dragon going dark and showing the bright green of their natural color. The beast fell, but the damage had been done. One less dragon in the world. As the beast fell, there was a sadness for all to behold. To the northwest of the city of Durg, 2 women emerged from the curved stone that was one of the teeth of the Dragon-Tooth Mountains. A rope tied the 2 together, as one woman cut the rope that was dangling into the cave below them. The second, Kassandra, set herself free from the first. The first woman turned back and looked at the second. As she did, Kassandra spoke. "It would be folly to bring her. We have what we need from her. She will seek out, and she will slay the monster for us. One less body that lay in our wake. Our work with her was done. It's up to our mistress now." The first woman nodded and let go of the rope after she cut it. She then began to work on the rope at her own waist. As Kassandra looked around, she noticed that there was a cache of food and cold weather clothing stashed here at the exit. Clearly, this was some escape hatch for the unsavory of Durg. The 2 dark purple-eyed women helped themselves to the provisions, leaving a few gold coins as recompense for the damages they had done to the route. The purple of their eyes differed from the amethyst eyes of the Skald. A dark purple instead of the pale, almost glowing purple. And both these women knew the importance of having such routes supplanted in major strongholds. They were vital for escaping when things were at their worst. And for the city of Durg, the worst was yet to come. They knew the hammer that was coming for that anvil, and they wanted no part of it. Other than the part that they had to play, of course. They had come and done their work. It was now time to report in to the forces in Port Skara and make their exit back to Lysaria in Credo. Lysaria was a formality. Their mistress already saw and said what needed to be done. But there was a ritual to it all. They had done their mistress' work, and it was time to return to her feet and report in the things that she may not have witnessed. Their mistress had so many eyes to keep track of, seeing much in what she does, but she cannot see all. She was not yet a god. Something beyond mortal flesh, but no, not a god. The first woman led the way, ever silent. Kassandra, nearly as quiet, followed the first. She was in thought and contemplation. Would the woman really be as useful as the tools that were already in the fold? Could this outsider, Meg, be trusted? And what made their mistress believe that this was the one to entrust this information in? It was not her place to question the words or actions of their mistress, but doubts did creep into the corners of her mind from time to time. It was not like they had been fully successful in the first conquest. Who's to say this one would turn out any different? It had to be different this time, though. There was so much planning that was done since Callisto fell. She, their mistress, didn't have the information then that she had now. Her network of spies were not in place. She only had herself and a handful of women to act on the information gathered. How foolish they were then. Now had to be different. Now must be different. The lives of so many of Kheasurid depended on it. Little did they know of the hellish fury that was going on to beset them once Callisto was back. Loyalty and duty on one hand, and oaths struck on the other. Their souls laying in the balance. It would cost the Order so much if they succeed. On the other hand, not much more if they failed, lest Harrow became involved. The price of failure would be oh so much greater if they were given to Harrow. Then they could only hope for death, and that was certain to be slow in the coming. Harrow was the one sentinel that Kassandra truly feared. Geralt, he was a soldier and was bound by honor. His executions were swift and efficient like everything else that he does. The Skald was savage at her heart, so their end at her hands would be brutal but swift. Harrow, however, he would study them and use them in his experiments, potentially using their flesh after death. So many bodies have served him after life was extinguished. And well, Linsid, if any of them earned her ire, they would only learn of it as their body fell to the floor, silent and deadly. They were tools. So when they had grown to a point which they were ineffective, they were retired in a multitude of ways. Kassandra hoped that it would be long in the coming for her. She and the woman ahead of her were both elves, so it would be a long time before age took them. Though wounds and injuries could sideline them long before age would. The woman ahead of her was riddled with scars, and was a woman that she would not wish to tangle with, lest she sought Necropsis' gates. That woman was a weapon. She, Kassandra, was a tool, not a weapon, in any stretch of the imagination. There were two kinds of silent ones after all. Those that were truly silent and dedicated their bodies and lives to the art of killing. The first woman was one of those. Kassandra was silent in service, but spoke and was listened to. There were used to be the invisible ones that faded into the background at powerful homes. The crowd that gathered in common squared palace halls. Many of them were servants for powerful people. It was their jobs to listen and gather information. They fed this information back to their mistress. She was one of these. There were so many stories that Kassandra held and could start a million wars with just some of the information that she knew. She could prevent a million more with the tales that she could share. Information was power, only if it were applied correctly. She could spread a story about the king of Kendor and the mistress that was only bedding him so she could take his throne for the people of Feduria. Feduria was now moving to act on their desires to grow beyond the borders of the kingdom. The chess pieces were in motion, and the queen was setting in on the king to steal the throne. Kassandra would have to return to that hall soon, before she was missed. She was truly honored to be called upon by their mistress to perform this task. She smiled to herself in the pride of success of the mission. Now to return and let their mistress know that a new weapon had been deployed and would be at play. Who knows if the woman that they left behind could end up a silent one day. Regardless, this Megan Nevarro, Meg, was a weapon, and a powerful one at that. She was still growing into her own, but the way she was growing, Crawled may be in trouble. As the wind howled through the Dragon-Tooth Mountains, only time would tell. Kassandra would put her coin on the young lady. The little dervish was a true whirlwind of blades when she was at her best. And her best was yet to come. If her blade doesn't clash with Corral's in over a year, she would bet on the younger woman. The woman ahead of her still believed that Corral was in his prime and not one to be beaten. She would secretly enjoy taking her coin. That mantle would rest upon the shoulders of Megan Nevarro. In 2 years' time, she would stake her life on it. Truth be told, all the lives of the Silent Ones now rest upon the shoulders of Megan Nevarro. In Linsid we must trust. In the shadow of the Dragon-Tooth Mountains, the two shadows traveled down the trails of the feet that came before them. The path that was made here was not one of animal make, but well-traveled road of boots of human-like footfalls. Kassandra looked forward to a relaxing rest. She was thankful for the hot bath that she was able to take when trying to capture Meg. That was weeks ago. She missed it dearly. It was a long walk to Port Skara, or at least she believed it so. In the meantime, she followed the truly silent one, as she tried to keep up with the footfalls of the assassin that led her. Kassandra's role was that of the eyes and ears of the Silent One, and occasionally a mouthpiece. That was her role for Meg, this time. She had to talk to her. She had to get her to believe the story that was told. The glory of this one was, she did not have to bend words or truths or spin tales. Her words were all true. That was important to her. And would be very important to Meg. She hated leaving Meg behind, but they were unable to get her dead weight up that rope and out of the cave. The drugs they used had a severe side effect, but necessary for the work that needed done. For the uninitiated to speak with their mistress, it took a lot. Luckily, they had not wasted all their doses in vain. They did find the one they were looking for, though it cost them one of their others. And then there was the other that they left behind. And there was no idea what state that one would have been left in. Hopefully that pup's cot would be comfortable enough for her. It was sad they lost one of their sisters in that pub, but calculated risks had to be made. If Lincid's plan were to be successful, there would be losses. This just happened to be the first. Kassandra didn't even know the name of the lost Silent One. It was a kind of sadness that the Silent Ones lost their names, in so many ways, in the service of Lincid. Their mistress was kind, but deadly. The next phase of things would have to play out. Meg would be found, as would Lyra. Such a waste of a talent in that one. Lyra could have been something more if she was a bit more independent or stronger of will. She had a good face to be like her, to be the eyes and ears of Lincid. Alas, the whole ordeal would be a haze for her. "I'll do the defenses halt," Frue Burduli called out to the captain of the Grim Legion, Krif Vultri. She had to see the northern front for herself. She had to see the morale of the troops, knowing that they had been beaten against for 2 weeks. It was important to see the troops and allow the troops to see her. As the Frue walked amongst the lines of troops, she analyzed the eyes of the soldiers there. She made sure to make eye contact with as many soldiers as she could. They were strong but largely untested. They would be tested soon. Devalton could have breached that wall a week ago if they wanted to, but they hadn't. Why, was the question. Why had they not breached the magical barrier? They threw spells at it, but knew that it would not breach the wall. It kept the sounds of war there, though. It kept their presence known. What were they up to? Why were they buying time, or was this another play? Did they have more forces on the way? What were they up to? What was Devalton doing? Krif was speaking, so she thought better to bring her attention back to the presence. "The wall holds. The exterior of the wall has been completely dismantled, revealing the barrier in full. The barrier still holds, however. And we still have the wall on this side of the barrier. The pressure has been constant, but they have not breached it as of yet. I don't know why they haven't breached the wall yet. By the size of the force that we've been able to see, they should have had a mage powerful enough to breach it. Or enough of them to combine their strengths to destroy it. I'm just thankful they haven't yet. But do question what they are playing at." Frue Burduli bent down and picked up some of the chipped stone and molded in her hand. The stone was dark gray slate, the same stone that the door was made of. It could break in layers that it was comprised of, but it took work. She felt the stone and thought to herself, but spoke her thoughts aloud. What are they playing? They were able to shatter the stone of the door. Why have they not breached this magical barrier? We should be prepared for an all-out assault, as it will come any day now. They are waiting for something, however. Perhaps it is merely for our morale to break. Or it could be something more devious. De Volton has never fought fair. Why would they start now? Then to the people around her. We must be prepared. The fact that they have not breached these walls is a blessing that we should treat as such. With the forces that they have brought to bear thus far, there is no reason to believe that our magical barrier here will prevent them from advancing when they feel like it. That is where you all come into play. It will be our shields and our spears. It will be our hammers and our axes. It will be other things that lay in wait for them. Durg depends on it. She touched the shoulder of a soldier as she said the word you. Durg depends on you. With the importance of her words not left for anyone to imagine, Burduli began to walk back away from the soldiers, calling Commander Vultri over to speak in private. I mean what I say. You will be our last line of defense when this wall comes down. You know as well as I that with wizards at their disposal, there is no doubt in my mind that they have the ability to take this wall down. Which means they are vying for some time for something. Something is unknown. It is giving us the time to train the untrained, should it come to it. We have walls like these to take down, and maybe that is what it is. They need more time to pull in more resources from the Volton, to ensure they make their way down to our heart swiftly. There are reinforcements on their way, on our side. But will they make it in time? Another unknown we have to contend with. Commander Vultri, your men and women will be the last line of defense before the city is challenged. With her words, Friar Burduli looked at Krif Vultri in the eyes. Serve me well, Commander. May your soldiers serve you well. Commander Krif Vultri smiled at Burduli's words. We know our duty, Frue. Until death we shall serve, and beyond it if we can. When this wall comes down, the Devoltans will be met with another wall of flesh, steel, and firm. We will try their mettle, send as many of them as we can to Necropolis' gates, where we will await them once again. In Necropolis we serve. Vultri meant every word, and knew his soldiers swore the same oath and were ready to meet the same fate. The Grim Legion lived up to their names. They were bound by oaths they swore, and would uphold them without falling. With oaths reassured, Frue Burduli was filled with confidence. And at that moment, the world shook. Shards of slate covered the lines of soldiers with dust and debris. The Grim Legion was forced back from the explosion, but they did not fall. Form ranks! It's time to earn your name! It's time to serve our duty! Yelled Commander Vultri, as he donned his helm and proceeded to his position. Shield wall form! Duty and honor, it is time to serve! Spears at the ready, here they come! Come they were. The forces of Volton were charging through the dust. The magical barrier was down, and the inner wall came with it. Vultri locked eyes with the commander of Devoltan's forces, Dragoon Kitch. As he did, he noticed that Kitch was smiling with the blade drawn. Kitch was in the half-plate red and black armor of the Dragoons. He pointed directly at Vultri with a hiss in his voice. "That one is mine." A resounding, "Yes, Dragoon," came from the forces charging in battle. The Grim Legion formed ranks and locked their shields, as did the Dragoons. As it did, the Dragoons slammed down on the wall with their hammers and swords. As the Dragoons slammed into the Legion lashed out with short spears and swords. The wall opened for the strike, locked back together immediately after the strike. The Dragoons were prepared for the attack and used the opening for the second to stab between the first. Several of the Legion fell to the swords and spears of the second rank of the Dragoons. But many of the first lines of Dragoons fell from the initial assault. The wall fell back, together, and linked. Linked together, they pushed forward, then fell back as the Dragoons attacked. As the wall fell back, the second line of the Legion sprung forward, striking out. The Dragoons formed a shield wall of their own. The two walls met with attacks. Over the walls, back and forth began. As one wall pushed against the other, one wall gave and then regained ground. The two walls met with attacks. The deadly dance started with shifts and sidesteps to line up stabs. Frue Burduli had to escape it. She was well beyond the lines and fled to the tunnel to the protection of the city. But she was the only one. The Grim Legion was well matched in the tunnel, but was not as well trained as the Dragoons of Devoltan. The sheer weight of the shield wall of the Dragoons pushed back the Grim Legion step by step. They were losing the fight an inch at a time. They were not losing many troops, but their heavier soldiers were weighing on the shorter stature of the dwarves. But this was not unexpected by the Legion, and they were slowly walking the line of the forces of Devoltan into a trap. To function as a unit was key to any shield wall success, and the Legion would try the Dragoons at their discipline. Vultri knew just how well his soldiers were at discipline. A few more feet and the trap would be released. Just beyond the catch, and the lever was thrown, opening the floor below them. The first two lines of Dragoons plummeted to their deaths. Now a chasm opened between them and crossbowmen, who immediately fired over the shoulders of the first line of the Legion to take down even more Dragoons. Even Dragoon Kitch was caught from a bolt from the assault. With no verbal command, the next line of Dragoons moved with Kitch and leaped across the chasm. They slammed into the wall, which was not expecting the move. The Dragoons dug in their heels and applied pressure to the shield wall of the Legion. It had a crack now, and Kitch took down the center man of the shield wall, and with that momentum pushed forward. "Get a bridge! In here on the double," he shouted in his whispery voice. "We need support immediately." The shield wall allowed Kitch through and closed up behind him. Kitch was now fighting four of the Legion and doing quite well. He was matching sword for sword and steering clear of stab of spear. Kitch was a living weapon that the Dragoons were known to be. The Legion's shield wall was pushing forward again to drive the 10 or so Dragoons that leaped over with Kitch back into the pit, to be with their brethren below. Kitch dropped another member of the Legion when his blade met formidable resistance in the form of Vultri. Vultri grabbed Kitch and pulled him from his soldiers, throwing him to an open space where the two of them could meet in combat. Push back! Do not leave them room to do that again. I'll deal with this serpent. Vultri called out to his men as he lowered his visor and charged into combat with Kitch. As Vultri closed, he released an overhead slam with a warhammer that he carried at his side. Kitch blocked the attack with his shield at an angle to allow the hammer to slide free. While he did this, he stabbed under the attack with his longsword. Vultri battered the sword to the side with his oversized shield. The full plate of the dwarf met the half plate of the dragoon. The dance of death went back and forth. Strike upon strike met with dodge or parry. The two combatants were well paired, but Kitch had more battlefield experience than Vultri. The massively chested dwarf was already heaving from the exertion. Kitch swung a wide arcing swing, lowering his shield completely in an attempt to overpower the shorter man. The footwork of Kitch was on full display, but his blow was not met with the shield of Vultri as he expected, but met with open air. Vultri releasing his glowing hammer strike to the legs of Kitch, which caught him off guard. When the strike found purchase in the thigh of Kitch, the taller man fell without a sound. Vultri took advantage and released a thunderous strike straight down, attempting to end the bout here and now. He too found his mark was missed, striking the ground with a thunderous strike that sent arcing sparks across the battlefield. Kitch used his shield to roll back on the hammer arm of Vultri, striking him in the wrist. This forced Vultri to involuntarily release his hammer. With the momentum, Kitch continued to roll to his feet, spinning a bit as he did to strike Vultri with the longsword. At the end of the spinning strike, Vultri had lost his hammer and his helm, but he had his life. Bleeding at the cheek, Vultri was not pleased. Kitch was not finished with the assault. Driving forward with a shield, which Vultri met with shield. Vultri did not see the blade that was following it, but instincts and training had him lower his head, and a good thing too, as the blade stabbed just over his curly black hair. Pushing forward, Vultri headbutted Kitch's helm, causing the nose guard to bend. At the same time, he slammed down with the shield, catching Kitch in the foot. The combination of the two attacks sent Kitch down to the ground again, this time dropping his shield to catch himself. Too focused on the battle to notice what was going on around him, Vultri never saw the explosion of energy behind him, until there was fire all around him. The fire met with some bodies that flew in around Vultri, shoving him to the side a bit. Vultri wasn't going to allow this to slow him in the assault with Kitch. He was focused on the attack now. As the dust settled, Kitch was getting to his shield, and Vultri struck with his own shield while he pulled the dirk from his belt. Kitch had discarded his helm, and it was clear that his nose was broken. Vultri's attack took Kitch off guard, but he responded quickly, lessening the blow. As the bodies began to hit the ground, Vultri's efforts were redoubled. He used his shield to force a sword and then stabbed forward with the dirk. He found purchase, but that was all a little too late. Kitch slid down the shield, cutting the gap in the armor plates between the thigh and the calf, using the momentum of the dwarf to remove the lower leg in a single slice. As Vultri fell for the lack of support, he saw that his soldiers were picking themselves up from the aftermath of the fireball. Their bodies were everywhere, looking at his own leg laying beside his head. He knew Necropus was calling him home. He never felt the blade as it plunged into his chest. Vultri was no more. Kitch had defeated him in single combat. Durg now awaited Kitch, and there was nothing that Vultri could do about it now. Standing over his body, Kitch whispered to him, "Worthy foe, I will remember your face and regret not knowing your name. You honored me with your blood, Now Necropus will honor you. Sleep well. Wake up. It's time for you to return to your friends, said a soft voice in the mind of Meg. Meg stirred at the voice, but her head was spinning from the drugs that still coursed in her veins. So many dreams. How long was she asleep? She tried to stand, which resulted in her falling again. As she fell, Meg realized that her gloves were gone. In a panic, she began to look around for her gloves, but they were nowhere to be found. She found her weapons, but nothing else. No backpack, nothing but clothes on her back and her job and weapons. The rest have been found by your friends. Not to worry. Why are you so concerned about your gloves? The voice asked in her head again. Meg looked down at her hands. The right one was not her concern, but the left hand was fused onto her arm and did not match her skin tone. The red clay of the skin marked that hand not belonging to her. Crixians are not thought of well in many places, and it's one of the things that I'm a little vain about, she said aloud, answering this voice. If her head wasn't so strange, she would have never done such an action. To her surprise, the voice answered, You should embrace that honor of your people. I understand being vain. I'm vain about certain things myself. Your friends will not judge you harshly. You have fought next to them and earned their trust and respect. As I have chosen you, I truly believe that you can destroy Geralt. He possesses that which you seek, the symbol of your people, and what you and your sisters have been sent into the world to recover. You will need help, but you have the skills to do the work, or will in time. I'm betting on you. Are you a god? Meg couldn't help herself but to ask the question. She had heard people getting direct messages from gods before, but never thought she would be one of these people. Not overly pious. Devoted, yes. Pious? Not exactly. To her surprise, the response that came back started with a laugh and simply, No, I am no god. I don't think I ever will be. Take it easy, you will have help soon. Stay awake. You will need to answer them when they call for you. Otherwise, they will not find you. That said, Meg laid back down, the purple fading from her eyes as she rested.
What are you doing?
Squeaky said to Regos when Regos finally opened his eye. He had been ignoring the eyes that were locked on him for the better part of an hour. In fact, the eyes had been locked on him for a lot longer than that. Squeaky had been staring at Regos for closer to 3 hours. As Regos looked at the black rain frog. Sleeping, what does it look like to you? He had pushed himself too hard for too long and lost a day. But they had to find Meg. He had mastered a location spell that would work on finding her. The rain frog yawned at him and then said,
Wasting time, it looks like to me. You found out how to find Meg yet?
Now raising his head. Yes, I have. Let's step back and we will find her today if she's in our reach. Just like that, Regos' head was cleared and he was ready to perform his craft. Gathering the energy that he needed, he began to move in a particular pattern needed and called out the verbal components required to perform the spell. As he spun, Regos tossed a handful of colored sand into the air. He ended the spell by clenching his fist and uttering the final word of the incantation. Holding the sand in the air, he saw Meg. Not in the sand per se, but in the mind's eye. He also saw the shortest route and the most direct path to get to her. 2 weeks worth of work paid off now. He saw her and how to get to her. I've got you now, Meg. I'm coming. Lower corner. Kadif. To speak of shadows of the past is one thing, but to speak of shadows of those shadows would be to speak of Kadif. The once glorious city of what was a peace-loving kingdom of Slykin, before a warlord forever changed the landscape and culture entirely of a kingdom. Amar Amar, O Safarian historian. Kadif was once a symbol of peace and learning that rivaled its Edian twin of Kairos. The city was once home of an archive of knowledge and wisdom that would rival all centers in Caledria. This was long ago, and it was the gem of the Age of Enlightenment. Kalen changed everything that Slykin was. Long before that, he destroyed what was Kadif, time of settlement. Kadif was a city built as a symbol of peace just after the Dragon Elf War. It was where the goodwill earned by the truce between the dragons and the elves started, and their good work started as well. It was here that the other races were taught and raised up from the sludge of the primal ways. It was through this peace and workings between the different races that the city was founded. Kadif was the first capital city of a non-elvish make, and the capital of Slykin as a whole. From the inception, the foundation of learning and sharing of culture was important to the people here. This reflected what Slykin was in the beginning as well. Tribes of centaurs worked closely with other races. Here was the only place in all of Caledria that centaurs held a seat at the table, acknowledged for their brilliance that they brought. It would not be long, however, before things began to splinter. The centaurs were very staunch in their ways of harming nature for any reason, being a fallacy. The races were builders, and they wanted to live in harmony with nature, with what nature provided, but could do no harm in the way that centaurs meant. With this conflict, the centaurs left and returned to the Mirewood Forest, where they called home. It was here that the opinions of both centaurs and other races were solidified around each other. After the exodus of the centaurs, the city began to grow again. The archives were constructed and the oral tradition was recorded here at first. Legends and stories that were shared by all save the Dragon Elf War were first recorded here. Most of the creation stories and the stories of the early days of the races were archived. The sharing of knowledge about plants and animals started. Some of the first alchemical recipes were archived here as well, and so on and so forth. The idea of how a mage school should be structured started in this very city. Kairos claims they hold that title, but in truth, it was the city of Kadif. It was also the city that one of Caledrian's most controversial heroes was born. This was the birthplace of Saros. Saros is given credit for being the heart of the formation of the magic schools, and in fact the heart of the governing body that would attempt to keep the arcane arts in check. All of that started with the formation of the education system here in Kadif. The glory days. During the peak of Kadif's, early in the Age of Enlightenment, all these tenets were followed. Kadif was led by a council that represented each of the walks of life, even the squalor of the city, as no city is without the less fortunate. The voice of these were heard as well. All councilors were given an even vote, an even voice at the table. Laws that would only benefit the wealthy and harm the poor were contested on even footing, and likewise the laws that only benefited the poor were evenly contested by the wealthy. Every person that called Kadif home could spend time learning at the Hall of Wisdom. Scholars were on hand at all times to help with those that desired to learn. This learning was more than just history. It was practical knowledge. Craftsmen from Durg would apprentice here, for times to assist in the cultures from growing abilities to craft. Belden himself spent time working at the council to set up the program, as he was long in the beard. Saros, the most prominent mage in the city, focused on alchemical and magical studies, helping determine if someone had the natural talents for the study of magic or alchemy. There were times when the leadership of the city would offer compensation to other experts in the field, bring them into the city not only for lecture and teach, but to record what they knew in the archives. Before long, the archives themselves was a destination for scholars around the globe. Trade was good, society was fat, and happy, one might say. Things were almost perfect. The downfall. To say Kadif was ideal would be a misnomer. But that was the goal of the council and many of the subjects. Nature is what it is, however, and bickering and argue over this law, that custom, and the like occurred regularly. Corruption was there, oh yes. But a city as concerned as it was kept it to a minimum. During this time period, Kadif was helping other kingdoms organize councils, leadership groups, establish foundational skills needed for ruling a people. It was the differences of those people that the trouble began. When the city of Kairos was founded, many of the people that believed that the city should be governed by a mage society left to join Kairos. People that believed that the city should be governed by the founding families or families of those around them left for Malhavic next. The dream of what could have been for Kadif began to sever. All the voices were needed for the system to work. Without even voices and positions of even power, the lines of fracture began to show. It was primed for the fall. The only thing it needed was that push. All it needed was Kalen to set his eyes on this utopian city as his foundation. Kalen was very charismatic, and he knew how to charm. He was also very good at playing on those that saw his innocence first. These two traits, along with his desire to build himself into an image of a god, was something that made him a perfect poison for Kadif. Kadif had no preparations for someone like him. The city was brilliant, but yet naive, and he preyed upon this naivety. Kalen's honeyed words were quickly allowed him to gain more control, more influence. He realized that the voice that he would need to silence first was Saros. What better way to silence a voice than to remove it from the hall? It was then that he put up the recommendation that the magical schools should organize independently to any kingdom, and recommended the Scholars' Council to gather in Zaphos. One chess piece move. Now that Saros was out of the way, the council needed representation from the magical school. And, well, with Kalen being respected for this as well, as recommending that Saros himself represent the council at large, It only made sense for him to be that voice. Slykin would be his. Step by step, Kalen made inroads to the city, and before anyone realized it, the council had decided that he should lead the council to break ties as the counselor. Continued manipulation continued to give him more and more power in the city, and thus the kingdom. Before long, the Ruby Tower was being constructed to be Slykin's very own magical school. By this time, no one realized that the city was doomed. A commoner had an accidental fire in the archives the very next day. Then only scholars were allowed entry to the archives. Each edict gave him a bit of control over the leadership of the city. Less freedom to the people of the city. Many from the street level saw this coming, and many left for the city of Kievstown to the north, making a name for itself for the trade and commerce. The council seat would be vacant and not filled. Continued speeches to the populace was leading to more and more people seeing Kalen as more than a wise counselor. Something far more. Before anyone had realized it, Kalen had full control of the city. But this was done in the window of years-long debates in the formation of schools of wizardry. This was done when Saros was distracted. By the time his focus came back to the city that he loved, Saros' voice was silent. Kalen was seen as the Mahdi of Kadif, the destruction. The city continued to prosper in many ways, more than before. Through the alignment of the city had shifted. The God Emperor, the Mahdi, brought wealth, trade, commerce to the city. Utopia was destroyed, and in the process, as the gap between those that were average citizens of the city and the wealthiest members of the city grew and grew. As this gap grew, so did the dissident voices. Many called for the return of Saros. Saros returned, and the political war between Saros and Kalen began, the second round. Saros was appalled at the state of the city and began to work the very first day that he arrived to reverse what he could. He also began speaking vocally against his God Emperor. Kalen was not pleased at all to hear the rumblings in the streets of his capital city, so close to the completion of the Ruby Tower. He would soon no longer need this city, and he could transfer many of the Empire's resources to the Ruby Tower and the smaller cities along the coast. Protests began to mount in the streets, which were quelled with force. However, this display of force by Kalen was not taken in stride. Saros had called for reinforcements from outside the city, with powerful mages backing those that were brave enough to uprise, and the use of force required to quell them went up exponentially. In his rage, Kalen answered strike for strike. Before long, the city was in open war, and war separated the class and ideology. Kalen was not displeased by this level of aggression. It gave him a platform and a voice to use against those that rose up against him. After all, it was they that brought the destruction to the city, and his machinations were already in place. Saros was defeated by him once before, and soon would be a second time. It would be the blame of Saros for the destruction of this utopian city. Saros and his rebels were closing in on the market district, where the merchants held power. A powerful shield was placed around the district to bait Saros into using full force to tear it down. Once the market district fell, the city could go back to the way it was. Saros saw victory in his sights, He would not allow for this simple barrier to keep him away from restoring the city to its former glory. Saros tested the wall and calculated the amount of force needed to destroy it without damaging much of the city. He called his forces back and he stood alone in front of the entrance of the market district. He gathered his force and cast a powerful blast of arcane power that would destroy this menial annoyance. As soon as he released his spell, something felt suddenly wrong. The tinge of arcane that marked that barrier was gone. His spell was cast, and it was too late for him to stop that spell. Saros had put too much power in the spell and could not master a counter spell in time. All he could do was watch in horror as the powerful blast entered the heart of the market district, where Kaelin's second surprise awaited him. Volatile explosives from the mines were waiting for the wick to be set by Saros' arcane energy. The result was an explosion. The blast was such that knocked Saros unconscious. And with the force of the explosion, the market district was leveled. The heart of Kheasurid was destroyed. Saros lost against Kaelin once again. Saros would not allow himself to lose another time. By the time Saros recovered from his wounds, the exodus from Kheasurid had begun. Kaelin had moved many of the enterprises to different cities and declared the Ruby Tower the new capital of Slykin, and swore to never allow something like this to happen again so long as he ruled Slykin. For Saros, he had been rescued from the city before he could be captured by Kaelin, now returning to Yidrix and the city of Karos. In a truly sour mood, he vowed that he would see the end of Kaelin's evil before he would find final rest. Little did he know that that vow would become something even stronger in years to come. Saros' name in Slykin was forever besmirched by the loss of life at his hands. The ruins. The city began to die that very day, but the city would not fully die until the destruction of Slykin. The earthquakes that struck with massive destructive forces of the blast designed to destroy a god caused new fault lines to come into existence. The loss of life was massive for the city. Even though it was only a shadow of its former self, the loss of life was significant enough to bring the ire of Necropus, being a young god at that time. Those with conflict in their hearts would not find rest in their death. Necropus was not yet used to the power that his words commanded. As a result, the city became a city of the dead, as not a single soul lives without conflict in their hearts. This would be a mistake that Necropus would not repeat, but Kheasurid had to pay for the mistake of learning. The curse on the city remains to this day, awaiting a brave soul to put to rest the powerful undead that Necropus made in his rage. These ruins remain in unrest to this day, and it is said if anyone were to fall in the city, they too would not know rest. Well, travelers, that's where I will leave you. Things have been quite busy for me, and it's impacted the release of this episode. For that, I apologize. I wish I could say I was through the busy season, but that's just not true. I will likely be cutting back the frequency to around one episode a month, but we'll try to get them out in a timely fashion. Meg is on the verge of being found, and Regos knew where and how to reach her. The hidden passage is yielding results, but the cave network is quite diverse. Time is of the essence, as the forces of Devaulton have breached the magical barrier and fight their way to Durg. Things are getting intense on the northern front. And with that, I want to thank Adrian Von Ziegler for the privilege of using his music to make the stories all that much better. For this month's Travelers, I will be making Tavern Stew. And you can find the recipes of Kheasurid up on patreon.com. With that said, I want to thank you for listening, and I wish you, if you wish to support the podcast, a rating where you find the podcast would mean a lot, or a simple thumbs up in YouTube space, or subscribe if you really like it. If you want to support a bit more and get the recipes of Kheasurid in your kitchen as well as additional war content, please support me over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/goldenimpin. Signing up will give you access to our Discord server. I hope to build a great community over there, but I can only do that with you. So won't you join us and join the conversation? If you want to follow me outside the podcast space, you can find me on Blue Sky at Empress Skald. I am Joe Craig, the Empress Skald. Thank you for listening, and remember, you've been scalded.